Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I'm a 32-year-old woman who works in marketing for a tech company downtown. My daily commute involves taking 4 different trains over 3 hours each way, which is exhausting but necessary since rent closer to the office costs more than my entire monthly salary. I live with my husband in a small apartment about an hour outside the city, and we're both trying to save money for our future. A few months ago, my life took a scary turn when my body started betraying me in ways I'd never experienced. It began with feeling unusually tired all the time, but I chalked it up to work stress and my brutal commute schedule. Then came the dizzy spells and moments where I'd feel weak and shaky for no apparent reason. I've been managing bipolar disorder for over 10 years now with medication and therapy. My condition has been stable for years, and I've learned to recognize my triggers and warning signs. What was happening to me physically felt completely different from anything related to my mental health. The breaking point came on a Tuesday morning during rush hour. I was standing on the crowded train when suddenly everything went dark. The next thing I remember was waking up on the platform with paramedics checking my vitals. They rushed me to the emergency room where I underwent tests for a stroke and heart attack. After a few hours of observation, they sent me home with instructions to follow up with my regular doctor. Since the hospital was closer to my in-laws' house than mine, my husband picked me up and we went there to rest. My mother-in-law has diabetes and keeps a professional-grade glucose monitor at home. She suggested checking my blood sugar levels since some of my symptoms seemed familiar to her from her own experience with diabetes. The reading came back at 40 milligrams per deciliter, which is dangerously low hypoglycemia. We thought maybe the test was wrong, so we tried again with more blood. Same result. My mother-in-law was concerned because I had eaten at the hospital less than an hour ago, and my blood sugar shouldn't have been that low. She immediately gave me 2 glucose shots from her diabetic supplies, and I started feeling more stable within 20 minutes. The next day, I was visiting my parents when the same symptoms hit again. I became pale, started shivering uncontrollably, felt weak, and my speech became slurred. My parents called an ambulance immediately. When the paramedics arrived, they found my blood pressure at 60/40, my blood sugar at 52 milligrams per deciliter despite having eaten recently, and my blood oxygen levels were so low that their equipment couldn't get a reading on the first 3 attempts. After they had me hyperventilate briefly, they managed to get a reading of 85%. I had almost no strength and no reflex responses when they tested my reflexes. The paramedics told my parents they needed to get me to the hospital right away because my vital signs were extremely concerning. They loaded me into the ambulance and took me to the same emergency room I'd visited the day before. At the hospital, the admission nurse was processing my paperwork while the paramedics gave him all the information about my condition and symptoms. The paramedics were thorough and professional, explaining everything they'd observed and measured during their evaluation at my parents' house. After receiving all this medical information, the nurse pulled up my records on his computer. He looked at the screen, then at me, and actually laughed before pointing out that I was also bipolar and asking if that was correct. The paramedics looked stunned. They exchanged looks with each other, clearly not understanding how my mental health diagnosis related to the physical symptoms they'd just documented in detail. I could tell from his tone and expression that he was ready to dismiss everything the paramedics had reported. He seemed convinced that I was having some kind of psychiatric episode rather than experiencing genuine physical symptoms that required immediate medical attention. Despite feeling weak and exhausted, I knew I had to speak up for myself. I'd dealt with mental health stigma before, but never in a medical emergency situation where my life could be at risk. I confirmed that yes, I was bipolar, but explained that I took medication for it, and it had been well controlled for years. I then asked him if his nursing degree had taught him that bipolar disorder doesn't cause low blood pressure or low blood sugar. The nurse's demeanor changed immediately. He looked embarrassed and started backtracking quickly. He claimed he never meant it the way it sounded and said he just had to check all possibilities as part of the admission process. I asked him why he had left then and pointed out that stigmatizing a patient based on their mental health diagnosis didn't look professional. I also reminded him that it was the doctor's job to evaluate possible diagnoses, not his. The nurse admitted I was absolutely right and apologized for his reaction. He promised to get me properly admitted so the doctor could evaluate my condition without any preconceived notions. From that point forward, he was extremely professional and courteous. He processed my admission efficiently and made sure I was comfortable while waiting for the doctor to examine me. The doctor who examined me took all my symptoms seriously. After running additional tests, they admitted me for observation. It turned out I was genuinely ill with a complex medical condition that required extensive investigation. I ended up being diagnosed with hypermobility syndrome, which explained the low blood pressure episodes. The low blood pressure was causing the oxygen saturation problems. However, the hypoglycemia remained a mystery that required additional specialist consultations. The doctor put me on medical leave from work for almost 2 months because my 6-hour daily commute on public transportation was deemed unsafe given my tendency to faint and experience these episodes. My condition was so unpredictable that traveling alone on trains posed a serious risk to my safety. During my recovery period, I had to undergo numerous tests, including blood work, imaging studies, and consultations with multiple specialists. I'm still working with a neurologist to determine if I have other conditions that might explain all my symptoms. My boss eventually allowed me to work remotely, which enabled me to return to work while still managing my health issues. I advocated for myself in that emergency room because if I hadn't pushed back against that nurse's assumptions, I might not have received proper medical care. I've been with my boyfriend for 3 years now, and for the most part, things are pretty good between us. He owns this vacation rental property that he rents out through a hosting platform. It's in a really nice area about 2 hours from where we live, and we use it ourselves maybe 4 or 5 times a year for weekend getaways. The thing is, whenever we go there, I end up being the one doing all the maintenance work. I don't mind it that much because I actually have the time and I'm pretty handy with fixing things around the house. I'll spend my weekend painting walls, fixing leaky faucets, trimming bushes, cleaning gutters, you name it. Meanwhile, my boyfriend sets up his laptop and works the entire time. He's always got some urgent project or client call that needs his attention, so I just handle everything else. He pays a property management company to take care of the rental, but honestly, they don't do much beyond booking guests and collecting payments. All the real maintenance falls on us when we visit, which really means it falls on me. So a couple months ago, the management company got bought out by another company. They scheduled this video meeting to introduce themselves to all the property owners and explain how things would change. My boyfriend was supposed to attend, but the night before he tells me he's got this important work deadline and asks if I can watch it for him. I asked him why he wanted me to go to his business meeting. He explained that it was just one meeting and that I knew more about what needed to be done at the property anyway, since I was always the one fixing stuff. I figured, fine, whatever. It's not like it would be hard to sit through a video call. So I attended the meeting, took notes, listened to all their policies and procedures. The whole thing was recorded too, so he could have watched it later if he wanted, but he never asked me about it afterwards. Never looked at my notes, nothing. Fast forward to last week. The new management company sends out an email about another meeting. This one was supposed to cover new pricing strategies and some changes to their cleaning fees. My boyfriend immediately starts forwarding me the meeting reminder emails. He kept reminding me not to forget about the meeting next Tuesday. When I asked what meeting he was talking about, he said it was the property management meeting and that he'd forwarded me the email. I told him that I wasn't going to this one and that he should handle his own business meetings. He insisted that I should go since I went to the last one and was already familiar with these people. I explained that the previous meeting was a one-time favor and that this was his property, his investment, and his responsibility, but he kept sending me reminders. Every day leading up to the meeting, I get another email forward from him with little notes reminding me about the meeting. I told him again and again that I wasn't planning to attend. He kept insisting it was really important and that I needed to be there. So I finally asked him the obvious question about why he wasn't planning to attend himself if it was so important. He mentioned that he had tennis with his friends that night and they'd had it scheduled for weeks. He wanted me to handle his business meeting so he could go hit tennis balls with his friends. And here's it is, he's planning to sell the property anyway. He's been talking about getting out of the rental business for months because it's too much hassle. So why did I need to sit through a meeting about pricing strategies for a property he's about to sell? I told him that if the meeting was that important, he should make it a priority and either skip tennis or go late. He tried to convince me not to be difficult, saying I was good at this stuff and asked better questions than he did. I suggested he could just watch the recording later, but he argued that it was better to ask questions live during the meeting. The conversation went in circles like this for days. He kept treating it like it was already decided that I would attend. He'd make comments about when I was in the meeting on Tuesday or reminding me to ask them about the maintenance request process. I was getting really frustrated. This wasn't my business. I don't own the property. I don't make any money from it. I just do free labor when we visit because I'm a good girlfriend who wants to help out. But somehow I become responsible for attending all his business meetings too. The day before the meeting, he sent me another reminder email. That's when I decided I'd had enough of this nonsense. I called my doctor's office and scheduled an appointment for the exact same time when the meeting. It wasn't an emergency or anything, just a routine checkup that I've been putting off. But now I had a legitimate reason why I couldn't attend. When Tuesday evening came around, my boyfriend was getting ready to leave for tennis. He asked if I was all set up on my computer for the meeting that started in an hour. I told him I wasn't going to the meeting because I had made a doctor's appointment. He seemed shocked and asked when I had done that. I explained that I'd made the appointment yesterday and had told him multiple times I wasn't attending this meeting. He asked if I couldn't reschedule the appointment, but I refused to rearrange my healthcare so he could play tennis instead of handling his own business. He insisted the meeting was really important and worried about missing important information about the transition. I pointed out that he should prioritize it over tennis if it was so important, and that the meeting was recorded anyway so he could watch it later. He stood there for a minute looking completely shocked, like he genuinely couldn't understand why I wasn't just going along with his plan. Then he started getting angry and said he couldn't believe I was being so selfish about just one meeting. I explained that it was his meeting about his property for his business and that I wasn't being selfish by expecting him to handle his own responsibilities. He said he'd figure it out and stormed out to go play tennis, leaving me to go to my doctor's appointment with a clear conscience. When I got home later that evening, I found him sitting at his computer looking frustrated. I asked how tennis went, and he said he'd had to leave early to catch the end of the meeting just when they were getting into a good rhythm. I asked if he missed anything important, and he said they mainly talked about seasonal pricing adjustments and holiday booking policies. I pointed out that sounded pretty relevant for someone who was planning to sell their property soon, but he didn't respond to that. The next day, I found out from his friend, who was also at tennis, that my boyfriend had spent the whole time complaining about me instead of focusing on their game. He told everyone I was being unreasonable and unsupportive of his business ventures. But here's the thing that really got to me. Later that week, he mentioned that he might not sell the property after all. He'd been talking to his financial advisor and decided it might be worth keeping for a long-term investment. So suddenly, this meeting that he couldn't be bothered to attend himself became a lot more relevant. I realized that this whole situation wasn't really about one meeting. It was about him expecting me to manage parts of his life while he focuses on the things he'd rather be doing. And honestly, I'm not sure I'm okay with that dynamic anymore. When I think about it, I've been enabling this behavior for a while now. I do the maintenance work at the property, I attended his first management meeting, and I never really pushed back when he started treating these things like they were my responsibility too. But I'm not his business partner or his employee. I'm his girlfriend, and there's a difference. I'm a huge basketball fan, and I've been following our local team for about 5 years now. I work two jobs just to afford season tickets because watching games live is my biggest passion. During the week, I'm stuck behind a desk doing data entry, and on weekends, I work at a grocery store. It's exhausting, but those game nights make everything worth it. I save up all month just to get decent seats, not courtside or anything fancy, but close enough to really feel the energy. That Tuesday night, our team was playing their biggest rivals in what could decide who makes it to the playoffs. I had been looking forward to this game for weeks. I got to the arena early, found my seat in section 104, and settled in with my nachos and soda. Perfect spot. I could see everything clearly, and the atmosphere was electric. The first quarter was amazing. Our team came out strong, and the crowd was going wild. That's when she showed up. This woman, probably in her 40s with that manager haircut, squeezed past everyone in the row behind me, with her husband trailing behind looking embarrassed. She was loud from the moment she sat down, complaining about the parking, the concession prices, and how her seat was too small. About halfway through the second quarter, I felt the first kick, a sharp jab right between my shoulder blades. I turned around and saw her stretching her legs, acting like nothing happened. I figured it was an accident and went back to watching the game. Then it happened again, and again. By the third kick, I turned around and made eye contact with her. I asked her politely to please stop kicking my seat. She claimed she wasn't kicking anything and was just trying to get comfortable. I explained that I could feel it every time and asked her to be more careful. She got defensive and told me not to tell her how to sit in her own seat that she paid for. Her husband looked mortified and whispered something to her, but she just rolled her eyes at him. I turned back around, hoping that would be the end. It wasn't. The kicking got worse. Now it felt intentional, hard, rhythmic kicks right into my back. Every few seconds, like she was keeping time with some song in her head. I couldn't concentrate on the game at all. Our team was making an incredible comeback, but all I could focus on was this woman behind me acting like a toddler. I turned around again and told her I had asked her nicely to stop and that she was ruining my experience. She said maybe if I wasn't so sensitive it wouldn't be a problem, claiming she couldn't help it if the seat was cramped. I pointed out that she was doing it on purpose now and asked her to just stop. She challenged me to prove it. Then she kicked my seat so hard that my drink spilled all over my lap. The people around us started staring. I told her that was it and I was getting security. She yelled at me to go ahead because she wasn't doing anything wrong. I flagged down one of the ushers and explained the situation. He was a young guy, probably a college student working part-time. He came over and very politely told her they had received a complaint about seat kicking and asked if she could please be mindful of other guests. She called the whole thing ridiculous and accused me of making things up because I was mad our team was losing. Actually, our team was winning by 12 points at that moment, but I didn't bother correcting her. The usher said he was just asking everyone to be respectful so we could all enjoy the game. He left, and for about 5 minutes, there was peace. I started to relax and get back into the game. Then the kicking started again, even harder than before. This time I didn't say anything. I just waved at the security guard I could see at the bottom of the section. He was an older, more experienced-looking guy with head of security written on his shirt. When he arrived, he wasn't as polite when the usher had been. He told her that she needed to stop disrupting other guests immediately. She denied disrupting anyone and accused me of harassing her instead. The security guard asked me what exactly was happening, so I explained the whole situation while she sat there making exaggerated faces and sighing loudly. He told her he was going to need her to control herself or she would have to leave. That's when she completely lost it. She started yelling about how he couldn't kick her out because she had paid good money for these seats. She ranted about this being America and having rights. The security guard explained that she had the right to enjoy the game without bothering others and gave her a last warning. She accused him of discrimination and claimed he was only taking my side because I had complained first. The security guard walked away, but he stayed within view of our section. For the next few minutes, she was complaining angrily to her husband, who was trying to calm her down. I thought maybe she'd finally gotten the message. Nope. The kicking resumed with a vengeance. Now she was also pulling on the back of my seat, making it rock back and forth. I could hear her whispering nasty comments about me to her husband. Other people in our section were starting to turn around and stare at her. I'd had enough. I stood up and walked straight to the security guard. I told him she was still doing it and actually worse now. He said that was it and walked up to our row with two other security guards following behind him. He told her she was done and needed to go. She refused, saying she wasn't going anywhere. He explained that she could walk out on her own or they could escort her, her choice. She yelled that they couldn't make her leave because she hadn't done anything wrong. By now, half our section was watching this unfold. The game was still going on, but everyone around us was more interested in this drama. The security guard told her to go now. That's when she made the biggest mistake of her night. When the security guard reached for her arm to help her up, she swung at him with a closed fist. It connected right with his jaw. The arena went silent for a moment. Even the players on the court seemed to pause. The security guard's expression changed completely. He immediately grabbed her wrist and spun her around, telling her she had just assaulted security and was under arrest. She screamed at him to get his hands off her and tried to pull away, ending up losing her balance. Her face went straight down into the concrete step with a loud smack that made everyone around us wince. The security guard warned her not to resist or it would get worse, but she kept struggling and screaming. The other two guards had to help hold her down while someone called for backup and medical assistance. Her husband was just standing there with his hands over his face, probably wondering how his night had gone so wrong. She kept screaming about assault and police brutality, demanding that someone record what was happening. Actually, several people were recording it, but probably not for the reasons she hoped. It took 4 security guards to finally get her out of there. She was screaming the entire time about lawsuits and rights and discrimination. When they dragged her up the stairs toward the exit, the entire section started cheering and clapping. People around us were shouting things like "good riddance" and finally some peace. Her husband gathered their stuff and followed behind them, apologizing to everyone when he went. I actually felt bad for the guy. Our team went on to win the game by 22 points. It was one of the most exciting finishes I'd ever seen, and I got to enjoy every second of it without someone kicking the back of my seat. The security guard came back about 10 minutes later with a small bandage on his jaw. He asked if I was okay down there, and I told him I was much better now and thanked him for handling the situation. He said people like that think they can do whatever they want, but not in his arena. So in the end, not only had my team won, but I'd witnessed the most satisfying comeuppance I'd ever seen. I work as a veterinary assistant and have been doing this for 3 years now. Getting hands-on experience while I prepare for veterinary school has been amazing. I'll be starting this fall. I love working with animals and their owners, helping sick pets get better, and being part of something that really matters to me. The clinic where I work is pretty busy, and we see everything from routine checkups to emergency surgeries. My boss, the head veterinarian, has been teaching me so much about animal care, medical procedures, and how to handle difficult situations. I've learned to give injections, assist with surgeries, comfort scared animals, and support pet owners during tough times. Working in veterinary medicine means you see the full spectrum of pet ownership. There are the amazing owners who bring their pets in for regular checkups, follow medical advice, and clearly love their animals. But unfortunately, you also see neglect and abuse cases that break your heart. It's part of the job, and while it's hard, it makes me even more determined to become a veterinarian so I can help more animals. Last weekend, I was at my friend's birthday party. It was supposed to be a fun night out after a long week at the clinic. I was talking to a group of people I'd never met before, just trying to relax and have a good time. One woman, who I'll call Karen since that's exactly the type she was, asked what I did for work. I told her that I was a veterinary assistant and that I'd be starting veterinary school this fall. I explained how excited I was about it being my dream job. Karen said she had always wanted to be a vet when she was little, but she could never do it because she loved animals way too much to put them down. I felt my jaw clench. This is something I hear all the time, and it never gets less insulting. What she was basically saying was that I don't love animals much she does, or that veterinarians don't care about the pets they treat. I tried to explain to her that euthanasia was definitely the hardest part of the job, but sometimes it really was the most loving thing we could do for an animal that was suffering. Karen shook her head and said that she just didn't understand how anyone could do that. She claimed that if you really loved animals, you'd find another way, and that there was always another way. Now she was really getting on my nerves. I could tell from her tone that she thought she was morally superior to everyone in veterinary medicine. I decided to tell her that what really got to me more than euthanasia was the abuse and neglect cases we saw. I described a case from last month where someone had brought in a dog that had been tied up outside for so long that the rope had grown into its neck. The infection was so bad that you could smell it from across the room. Karen's face went pale, but she kept talking. She said that this was exactly what she meant, claiming that if more vets really cared, they'd do something about that instead of just killing animals. This woman had no idea what she was talking about, but she was acting like she knew better than people who had dedicated their lives to helping animals. I explained that we do report abuse cases to animal control and work with shelters to help neglected animals find homes. But I told her that sometimes an animal is so sick or injured that the kindest thing is to end their suffering. I described a recent case where we had a cat come in that had been hit by a car. Its spine was completely severed, it was in incredible pain, and there was no way to save it. The owner couldn't afford surgery even if it would have helped. I asked her what she would have done in that situation. Karen said that she would have found a way to save it. She claimed there were always options if you really cared enough. I asked her if she would have let that cat suffer for weeks or months, unable to move and in constant pain, just so she could feel better about not euthanizing it. Karen backtracked and said that wasn't what she meant. She maintained that she just thought if vets really loved animals, they'd work harder to find solutions. At this point, I was done being polite. This woman was not only insulting my profession, but she was being completely unrealistic about what veterinary medicine actually involves. I told her that since she clearly cared so much about helping animals, she should come volunteer with me at the animal shelter next weekend. I explained that they always needed people to walk dogs, clean kennels, and help with adoptions, and that it was a great way to make a real difference in animals' lives. Karen immediately made excuses, claiming she didn't really have time for that because she was very busy. I pointed out that she seemed too busy to help the animals she claimed to love so much. She got defensive and said that it wasn't that simple, that she had a lot of responsibilities. I agreed that she apparently had time to criticize people who actually worked with animals every day, but couldn't spare a few hours a month to volunteer. Her friends were starting to look uncomfortable, and I could see Karen getting even more defensive. Karen tried to defend herself by saying she donated money to animal charities and that this was helping too. I acknowledged that donating was great, but suggested that maybe before she told people they didn't love animals enough, she should try actually working with them. I invited her to come spend a day at our clinic to see what we really did. Karen said that she didn't need to do that to have an opinion. I agreed that she didn't need experience to have an opinion, but pointed out that she might want some experience before insulting people who had dedicated their careers to helping animals. The conversation was getting heated, and other people at the party were starting to notice. Karen was clearly flustered. Karen tried to backpedal, claiming she wasn't insulting anyone and was just saying that she loved animals too much to hurt them. I shot back that sometimes the most loving thing you could do was prevent suffering, even if it was hard emotionally. I suggested that since she seemed to know better than all the veterinarians in the world, maybe she should go to veterinary school herself. Karen said that maybe she would. I told her that would be great, mentioning that it was only 8 years of school after a bachelor's degree plus internships and residencies. I added that I was sure someone who couldn't even volunteer at the shelter would definitely stick with that kind of commitment. At that point, Karen walked off without saying goodbye to anyone. Her friends followed her, looking embarrassed. Later, my friend who hosted the party told me that Karen spent the rest of the night complaining about the rude vet student who was attacking her for loving animals. I don't regret standing up for myself and my profession. I manage database systems and user portals for a massive global company with thousands of employees spread across different continents. My job is pretty straightforward: keep the systems running, manage user access, and make sure everything stays secure. The whole mess started about 3 months ago when my manager decided he wanted to optimize one of the portals I manage. This particular system is used by various teams for project management and data analysis. It's been running smoothly for years, with about 100 active users who know what they're doing. My manager called me into his office one Tuesday morning. He's one of those guys who got promoted to management but doesn't really understand the technical stuff anymore. He told me he wanted me to clean up the user list for the portal and remove anyone who didn't actually need access. I said that made sense, and I'd go through the list to remove inactive accounts and people who'd changed roles. He seemed satisfied and told me to just use my best judgment, so I did exactly that. I spent a couple of days going through the user list, checking with team leads, and removing accounts for people who had left the company, changed departments, or simply didn't use the system anymore. I reduced the list from 100 users down to 30 active, legitimate users. Everyone who needed access still had it, and I'd removed all the dead weight. My manager seemed happy with the results initially, but that satisfaction didn't last long. 2 weeks later, he called me back into his office. He complained that 30 users was still too many and demanded more details. When I asked what kind of details he wanted, he said he needed a complete breakdown with names, teams, who they reported to, and how often they accessed the portal. He wanted everything. It was an annoying request, but not unreasonable. I spent another day putting together a comprehensive spreadsheet with all the information he wanted: every user, their department, their manager, and their usage statistics. When I presented it to him, things got weird. He looked at the list and said he didn't recognize half the names. He wanted to know who these people were. I explained they were employees from different departments, pointing out that we have over 3,000 people working here across multiple countries. He told me that if he didn't know them, they probably didn't need access. He wanted me to delete everyone whose name he didn't recognize. I asked if he was sure, explaining that some of these were senior analysts and project managers from our overseas offices. He just repeated his order to delete them. This was where I should have pushed back harder, but I was getting tired of the back and forth. I did what I asked and removed about 15 more users, leaving us with just 15 people who had access. The next morning, my phone started ringing at 3 a.m., then 4 a.m., then continuously until I finally turned it off. My email was flooded with urgent messages about system outages and people unable to access critical project data. I'd removed several key administrators from our London and Tokyo offices who were responsible for overnight maintenance and support. When I got to work the next morning, my manager was already at my desk, looking frantic. He demanded to know why the system was down and why no one could access it. I explained that it was because he told me to remove all the users he didn't recognize, which included the overnight support staff and several system administrators. He frantically told me to add them back, calling it a disaster. I asked him to confirm that he wanted me to add back the users he had told me to remove. He said yes, obviously. I kept it professional and restored the access for everyone who actually needed it. The system was back to normal within an hour. 2 weeks later, he called another meeting. He complained again that he still wasn't happy with the security of the system and thought too many people had access. I pointed out that we were back to 27 active users, which seemed pretty reasonable for a system this important. He said he wanted to review the list again with me and that we needed to be more selective. So we sat down and went through every single user. 27 people used the system daily as part of their core job responsibilities. There were only 3 users who didn't use it regularly: my manager himself and 2 other senior executives who had access for political reasons, as he put it. They wanted to be able to look at reports occasionally, but never actually logged in. Then he made his most ridiculous demand yet. He told me to delete anyone who doesn't use the portal daily as part of their core job. I pointed out that this would include him and the 2 executives. He quickly said no to keep them because they needed oversight access, He wanted me to delete everyone else who didn't use it every single day. I asked for clarification. He wanted me to remove people based on daily usage, except for him and the other two executives. He confirmed that was exactly what he wanted. Then he handed me a template for a form he'd created, explaining that from now on, anyone who wanted access had to fill out a formal request explaining why they needed it. The form was ridiculously detailed, asking for business justification, manager approval, expected usage patterns, and about 10 other fields. I told him I'd implement this policy. I did exactly what he asked. I removed the 3 users who didn't log in daily, which happened to be him and the 2 executives. Everyone else kept their access since they actually used the system for their jobs. About 2 weeks passed peacefully. Then my phone rang. He called to complain that something was wrong with the system because he couldn't log in anymore. I told him the system was working perfectly fine. When he asked why he couldn't access it, I explained that I had removed all users who don't use the portal daily as part of their core job responsibilities. I made sure to mention that this was a direct quote from our last meeting. There was a long pause. He told me to add him back to the system. I said I'd be happy to help him with that. I reached into my desk drawer and pulled out one of his own forms, sliding it across the desk to him. His mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. He protested that this was ridiculous and reminded me that he was my manager. I acknowledged that I understood but explained that he had created this policy. I told him that everyone who wanted access needed to fill out the form and explain why they needed it, and I was just following his instructions. He asked if I couldn't just add him back without the form. I explained that wouldn't be fair to all the other users who had to go through the proper process and reminded him that he had been very clear about security being important. He grabbed the form and walked out of my office. That was 6 weeks ago, and he still hasn't filled it out. Every few days he asks me when I'm going to restore his access, and I just point to his empty inbox where his completed form should be. Our working relationship has actually improved since then. He stopped micromanaging the user access lists and trusts me to handle the technical decisions. The system is running smoothly with 27 active users who actually need access, and I haven't had to deal with any more arbitrary user purges. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.